welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts, and you can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now, here they are. It's the legendary Margaret and Michael Lyons.
Boy, that was smooth.
Yes, that was. Good evening, everyone. We are in for a very interesting hour.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
Oh, good. Who's coming? We having guests?
No, dear.
No?
But we are going to take steps into authenticity. So, saying that, I'm Margaret.
Authentically Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Michael. With the 100% real me.
Yes. Actually, that is required right now.
I didn't know there would be a test.
No testing, just being.
Just being. Well, and tonight we are going to talk about authenticity, and we're going to lead off authentically with the quote.
Yes.
You want to go for it?
Okay.
This is our friend Eckhart.
No.
This is not our friend Eckhart.
This is not. This is not an Eckhart Tolle quote. It is a Ben Okri quote. The most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering. Ben Okri.
When I found that, I love that quote, because we started off thinking about, let's do a show about authenticity, and you had written something I thought that was interesting about how to introduce that type of theme, and as you just said a moment ago, it seems to be both a very scarce commodity today, authenticity, as well as something which is desperately desired and really sought after.
Right.
So, and I think some of the linchpins of what there are things in societies, and maybe many more things in earlier societies, and these are cyclical, so they'll come back again, which would kind of were your bona fides. They were kind of your proofs that you could show to someone, not explicitly, but you would just show them that you were a genuine person. Some rituals, a firm handshake, a direct manner, sort of an open and listening and being able to speak, sort of clearly and to present yourself. It's being sort of a forthright person. And people would say, "Oh, they're authentic, they're genuine. They're a real person. They're someone you can actually talk to, you can trust." And then little by little, these things have been sort of broken down over, let's say, the last few tens of years, or maybe even a little bit longer. And so it's very difficult to without any. For argument's sake, if you went back 50 years or 100 years, but let's say 50 years back into our parents' heyday, and they would have said, well, you can always trust the government. That was just sort of an axiomatic thing. If somebody came from the government and said X, Y, or Z, you just trusted them. Or you can always trust your doctor. Right. That was like a big axiomatic thing. 4 out of 5 doctors agree. That was like, right. Wow.
Commercials.
And there's many, yes, but many of these sort of axiomatic trust positions have been eroded.
Right. No, it used to be that if it was written down, then it must be true.
It's in the paper.
Right.
I mean, you almost laugh now. It's in the paper, because you can't. Well, it's unfortunate, but you can't trust it.
What you're talking about is when the social mores were accepted. Everyone took that as a foundation on which to communicate one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, that's all been broken up because people are basically saying, well, you don't know who I am or what my experience is. Let me show you. And let me show you usually is the facade that they've created to say, well, this is who I am. And it has nothing to do with authenticity, but everything to do with a construct, a mental construct that they want accepted. So that social interaction foundation has changed. It's not accepted, as you had said, where the examples that were given was like, yeah, you always trusted that the doctors were telling you the right bit of information, or that it was written down in the newspaper, it must be true, or anything written down. And the generation now, I'm sure, doesn't understand that back then there was a very strict code of how you should be writing information down or presenting any kind of any news article or any kind of essay or paper. You had to very not strict, but rigorous. Thank you. It was there were rules on which you had to present where you got your pieces of information, how you got them, documenting all of that to show that this is an original concept by you. And these are the reasons why you came up with this concept. And you had to document it all. If you didn't, then it was in the realm of opinion. And it seems to have that dividing line between opinion and fact has blurred tremendously.
I mean, you would have opinion pieces.
Right. And it was perfectly fine to have an opinion piece.
Right.
But you can't present it as fact. And even back when I was in grammar school, we were taught that was considered yellow journalism.
Right. And it's an interesting phrase, but if you go to the underpinnings of that, what it was is there was a sort of an assumed trust in the word of your fellow human being.
Yes.
And then there were all these. Yes, the word was very important. Your word was very important. And then there were all these sort of safeguards too. There was a certain as you said, rigor in institutions that had this, and it used to be called the sacred trust. You can imagine that. The sacred trust, the privilege to bring information to the general public was gated with this sort of sacred trust. If you were accepted into this profession where part of what you were doing was in essence gathering and condensing and then reporting information.
Right.
That this was something that was that people would trust you, and that to break that trust was something very it was very serious. It was a very serious breach. And, maybe one individual might do that, but then the society at large, or the institution to which they belonged, would be shamed by it, would expel them from, this particular institution, whatever it might be, would make profuse and a public retractions and apologies, and try to make amends, because what was being eroded was the general trust in that institution. You can pick almost anyone today. Now, those foundations are gone at this point. Yeah. And what we're left with is sort of a miasma of people who are looking for authenticity in sort of a bewildering wilderness of, opinion or at best, and at worst, of outright propaganda and manipulation. So there's a great dearth of authenticity in the general sort of atmosphere of the world today, And but on the flip side is this huge desire, this huge need for people to find some form of something they can trust. So when you can't trust anything, it's a very difficult space to operate in.
Well,
so you have to find something that you can trust. And you've heard of people who basically say, well, I only trust something if I've seen it from like 15 different places. And even the pictures don't matter anymore, Margaret. There's deep fake everything. Photoshop used to be the way to do it. Now you have deep fake videos of all types. Where you can with AI, right? You can fake the voice, you can fake the face, you can fake, and so now any kind of news that comes out and immediately gets spun in 500 different directions. Oh, that's got to be fake, and this got to be this, and this is that, and this is that, and this is what I heard, and that, and so it just becomes this bewildering, chaotic. It's gotten extremely chaotic. There aren't any sort of guideposts. There aren't any rocks upon which you can set your flag and say, yes, this I know is ground truth. Now, of course, they still exist, but they're being drowned in a sea of just chaotic. It's not even misinformation. It's to the point of being. It's no longer information. It's at the point of noise. In electrical engineering, in engineering in general, you have something called the noise floor. Well, the noise floor means that, yes, there's still information down there, plenty of it, but it's covered up in the weeds. It's covered up in the grass. You can't see it anymore because what's happening, which is actually true, is covered up by a lot of basically chaos. It's like being in a giant room where everybody's babbling and yet somebody's trying to tell you something important, but you can't hear them. You can't hear them because it's just not getting to you.
Right. Like a giant cafeteria that has no sound deafening devices on the walls.
Exactly.
You
So
can barely hear anything.
So we decided, let's talk about authenticity. And how do you, what are the linchpins? There still are, authentic. There are still life is real, and there's an authenticity to it, a ground truth authenticity to being, and there's a ground truth authenticity. It's hard for me to say that, to reality. There's an actual true reality out there, to the extent that we agree upon it, and those things don't change regardless of how much chaos you throw on top of them as far as words and opinions and all that stuff. The actual ground truth of this happened to that, were it to happen right in front of you, would be as real as it would be real, absolutely real. So how do you get to the point where you can extend it, or how do you get to the point where you can internalize it so that you can know that your reality has an authenticity to it?
Well, until you come to the point where you're quite tired of the false, especially in yourself, because I think there's nothing more dissatisfying or disheartening than realizing that your outward face is completely different from your inner being. And the people that are interacting with you are only interacting with that outward face, the part that you cobbled together and say, okay, this is who I am. Let me tell you who I am. I'm this. But you can't even say that to yourself. That outward face doesn't click with the inward being.
There's a dissonance.
It's a cognitive dissonance that sets up. And there is a deep dissatisfaction as well as a sadness to the soul when that happens. Because you sit there and you go, well, people they're interacting with that piece that's out there, but it's not me, who I am, that they're interacting with. I've got, I don't know, usually I've got 10,000 likes, and all they want is that piece that I'm putting out. There's no real relationship with who I am.
Mm.
And that doesn't feed the soul. It has the appearance of feeding the soul, but it does not give any kind of life to you, because it's just some made-up piece that this interaction is being aimed to. So until you're fed up with that kind of distant relationship, if you want to call it a relationship, you won't take steps towards authenticity. That's why I would call it a journey. Because when you realize that what you want is for people to interact with who you actually are, that becomes a journey of discovery of what you think you are from who you actually are.
I want to go back because I like that exactly so. Because what I think what you're saying at a basic level is there's a part of you, let's say it's your heart true, that knows that you're living a lie. That's kind of the phrase, that whatever you put out there, the sort of the face, the facade, is not really you. And there's also, I believe there's an energy imbalance here. You said cognitive dissonance, and it is true, but there's also an energy imbalance. When you're continually having to kind of put up the facade, you're expending much more energy than you're getting. And it begins to wear thin. You get tired of that. You get tired of keeping up appearances, You get tired of telling everyone that you're 27 even though you're 47, and trying to desperately run against the clock for one example. You can for a long period of time, as Lincoln famously said, you can fool people, but you can't fool yourself ever. And so internally you have this dissonance, you have an energy imbalance, you feel as though you're not getting anything from this. You're always giving. It's wearing you out. It's wearing you thin. It's not nourishing the soul. It's actually taking from your being and your life. It's a parasitic sort of thing.
Usually when you put a certain type of facade out there, the people that want to interact with it want something.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with a nurturing relationship, but everything to do with what do you have for me that I can use and let me take it. A very soulless interaction. And you get tired of soulless interactions. That's the truth of it. And until you recognize that within yourself, you will continue to have soulless interactions.
And I think people, there's a certain awareness that kind of starts to grow and grow, even within the phoniest of people, that they're phony. That this is a hollowness, an emptiness. There's a lack. So you find that you say, well, my life is so meaningless. My life is so unfulfilling.
Who was it that had put that quote out that said, most men live lives of quiet desperation?
Quiet desperation. Gosh, now I'm going to have to remember that. Who said it? Gosh, I'll have to think about it.
We'll reference it in a minute. But that is the underlying truth. That when you are living according to somebody else's rules, tenets, like society says you have to do it this way, and you give over to it, there the soul is not nourished, because you're every day interacting with this, it's almost I want to say a monetary exchange, economic.
Well, it's like a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's what you mean.
Yes, it has no. It's pretty much just this exchange of goods instead of exchange of heart-to-heart ideas. I mean, just in the quote that we had, we have the ability to create, to endure, to overcome, to transform, to love, and be greater than our suffering. And I believe that the suffering aspect is when you realize that there is nothing but soulless interactions around you. There's an amazing isolation that you feel when that comes about, and you're like, no, I want an interaction that is soul to soul. And there are people out there that are trying to interact with me, but they're only interacting with this piece I've put out.
Or with what society says. It was Thoreau.
Thoreau.
Sorry, the interweb saved me, but it was right in the back of the tip of my tongue. I was going to come up with it, but yes, it was our friend
Henry David.
Henry David.
Yes.
And it's something so pithy that Thoreau would come up with it. But the kernel of that, and the kernel of what you just said, and going back to our quote, authenticity is like being. In fact, it's very close to being. It's part of every person. When you are born, when you come into the world, when you open your eyes as an infant, and you look upon an infant rather, they are authentically there. They are all themselves. They are looking at you with the directness of being and wanting to connect authentically to you. In fact, that first relationship, which is often child to the mother, is a transformational, authentic relationship. You know this child, they know their mother, they know their parent, and that the authenticity of that is rooted directly in that soul-to-soul relationship. Now, why is that so incredibly important and incredibly authentic of a relationship? Because their being, completely unfettered by ego and falseness and facades and all, connects directly to the being of their parent, because it calls forth, authenticity calls forth authenticity. The being calls forth the being. It strips away those facades. And then as you interact with your children over many years, they cause suffering, lots of suffering. Children are great at causing suffering. But you would give up and suffer nearly anything. You would give your life for your children. Why? Because there's that authentic, direct, soul-to-soul relationship. Same thing with your significant other or someone that you have a deep personal relationship with. The authenticity of that relationship calls forth your being. It calls forth an authentic response. We see it here right in I don't remember the gentleman's names in our quote. Authenticity, he says it nearly last, but I would say almost first, in our capacity to love. Because love is not like. It's not, gee, you're beautiful today, or gee, I love the way your hair smells, or gee, you have a really fast car. These are all, desires or perhaps something that attracts you, but a true love relationship is below and around and surrounding and in being.
It's deep.
It's deep. And a love relationship not only is, let's say, formed in the temporal, but it exceeds your temporal existence, your loved one's temporal existence. The their physical appearance, which may change dramatically and probably will change dramatically over the course of that relationship. None of that matters, because that's all, even to the extent of how your body looks, feels, whether your mind is sound or scattered, none of that matters to an actual being-to-being relationship. And in that you have the kernel of true authenticity. You know that this being is connected to you at a heart-to-heart level, and it draws forth not only authenticity in that relationship, but if we've all had this experience. You see someone, or you see a couple that's been together for many, many years, and you can feel, even without having talked to them for an instant, that this is a relationship which was forged over that great period of time, and it calls forth from you an authenticity in witnessing it. You say, wow, there's a real solid relationship there.
Well,
you can feel it.
Yes, it is. And whether or not the observer can actually recognize that kind of frequency of love, I have no other.
That's a great way to put it.
Because, again, love, the word itself, has many levels and definitions. But what we strive for here on this earth is to come to the point of unconditional love.
Yes.
And we as humans, let's face it, there's conditions. We are surrounded by conditions.
No.
And our ego likes to react to things when you're not happy, or things haven't been met, or you have expectations of the way it should be. And again, on the journey to authenticity, you have to let go completely of those expectations. Because you're realizing that the expectations are put upon you. Either you have to identify, first of all, where these expectations are coming from. Is it your family? Is it society? Is it what you read in a magazine somewhere? Is it some video that you saw? Or it's saying that you're only good if you do it this way. You're only acceptable if you do it that way. It's like fashion is a big one for that. And, this is in, that's out. This color is the color of the year. What kind of shoes, etc.
But, the inauthenticity of that is almost accepted. But when you have it in relationship, it becomes void. It becomes...
well, it's a conditional love.
Yeah.
Which does not come, it's not very deep. It's usually a surface.
Right.
You've got to meet this and meet this and meet, and if you love me, you're going to do this and this, et cetera, et cetera. And understanding, why does that happen? Why does that work on another person? And it's usually fear. It's acknowledging that you're afraid that suddenly you won't be accepted.
Oh, yeah, you mean, yes, exactly, true, yes.
Yeah, in the relationship. And every human being has to understand that every other person in this world, they yearn for these three things. The first is to be understood by another, to be acknowledged, and to be loved. Those three are basic to our humanity. And if you don't accept that and realize what's going on, you can be manipulated by any of these three. you're not being understood. Oh, no one's noticing, acknowledging the things I'm doing, and nobody loves me.
And nobody loves me.
Right. So to understand that that is an aspect, that it's a core aspect of our humanity. You have to understand when someone's trying to manipulate you through lack of any of these three. And that takes a mature perspective to do.
Well, exactly so. As people will often talk about, let's say, the callowness of youth, and the word callow is a good one, but it really just means innocence in some ways, and the innocent are often preyed upon by the inauthentic. Now, the interesting thing about today's youth is that they've become jaded in some regards, and that's unfortunate. But it also is become a sort of as a defense mechanism. One of the problems with a society where you do have strong structures, which you are supposed to trust implicitly, is that can be abused, and often is, and that abuse in a society which cares about these structures usually results in some sort of correction. But if the abuse erodes trust to the point where you can no longer trust anything, we talked about this in the earlier part of the show, it also falls back upon the individual to withdraw their implicit trust, but then use a lot more discernment and a lot more be a lot more defensive about what you let in. So in our current times, which are very chaotic, and where there seems to be very little that you can trust that comes in, this also falls down into the youth of today who are having to deal with this, and their innocence is in some ways being stolen from them, but their perceptions and their trust of their inner voice, of their heart voice, is this true? Can I trust? Is this person authentic? Is this authentic? Can I let it in? So they have a better screen in many ways because of the fact that they have to.
Yes. Necessity.
So the problem though becomes that's the flip side of the coin. Now, because you don't trust anything, you lead somewhat of a solitary existence, or an existence which has to have as its first layer a very defensive outer shell. The piercing of that is very important, because people, as Margaret just said just a little while ago, at our core, we need these trust relationships. If you don't have them, you have a void, you have a lack, you are less than you could be. However, because they are so easily abused, and because in the current environment, the current sort of chaotic environment, it is very difficult to be able to trust. We have a generation, I hate to use the word, but we have a generation now which is sort of growing up in a form of isolation. They will very easily interact at a social level, but they reserve so much of themselves behind this sort of barrier of, you can't come closer than this. Because if they feel if they open these doors, that the floodgates rush in, and that they have, the chaos can't be let inside. So their authenticity is being very strongly guarded, but it's also being muffled. It's also being kind of hidden, if you will. And that choice to trust is sort of the thing that you were talking about with the 4-year-olds. You have to get them to the point where they can start to do a little sort of test trust and see if you can build that relationship. And unfortunately, that means that if that relationship breaks, it's more than just a casual break. It can cause great damage because of the fact that it took so much to get there to start with, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But we still need it. We still need that authenticity.
Well, it's again understanding that The foundation of that is the fear that you will not be accepted, understood, acknowledged, or loved. Those three are just vital to the human soul. And when you understand that there is a depth to you, that your soul also can go inward to your spirit, which is eternal, this aspect of you that does not die, and set up a relationship with that eternal peace, that can be the anchor by which you can begin to discern, is this true or is this not? In other words, when you see something happening and you're trying to figure out, well, is this true or not? When you turn inward and ask that heart space, is that real? Is that true? Your heart will give you an answer. Very direct, very simple. But if you ask your head, you will get what the head wants you to get.
Yeah, and oftentimes what that is societal, or it is, the mores, or it is what's coming from sort of the chaos, if you will. The head is where the fear resides as well, that you won't be accepted, or that someone will tell you that, you should be this way or you should be that way. The tendency, and this is the thing, that the way that people abuse trust is through the head gate, if you will, through the thoughts, through the fear gate, if you will. Oh, everybody's doing this. Well, you don't want to be the only person that's not going to the XYZ thing, or how will you ever interact with anyone if you don't play this game or do this sort of join this club or have this particular outfit on. These head answers about whether or not this thing is true or not true are always the lies, and there's little that is less authentic than your thoughts. Your thoughts are the most inauthentic part of you, because what I think of me and what you think of me and what you think of me are all phony.
Yes.
But as Margaret just said, the heart, and I love what you just said, I want to go back to it, is that if you're looking for authenticity, you can start by looking within. You can take your soul and have a relationship with your spirit, and in that sense, you are opening yourself up to the spaciousness of consciousness. Your heart true self, your soul, embodied in flesh, has to realize that it is part of the greater, of the consciousness, of the being, and of the being which is an emanation of the source being.
Yes.
That relationship and that dialogue, it's not really a dialogue, but it is the sense of energy, of authenticity, is solid. It is the foundation of the universe right there, the consciousness relationship with being.
Right? When you are capable of observing yourself, you've switched your focus from soul to spirit.
Exactly. And that voice, that lens will tell you true about everything else.
Yes. It has a peace to it that the soul will look over and say, oh, I need some peace. Can I have that right now? And these are all you. This is an aspect of you, but it's an internal dialogue that happens. And what we've found, at least speaking with many people, this generation that has grown up with the computers and having to deal with being bombarded by all kinds of advertising now, whether it be on your phone or the screen, your computer, or, these little hijackers that come in and steal what you're looking at. If you think of that as the foundation of how these young ones have been brought up, of course you're going to put something out there to make sure that, well, do I want to interact with this or don't I? And that, I find, is an amazing saving grace to humans, is that they have decided that I will not invest in a lot of time, money, or breath in interacting with this person or the appearance of this person, because they're not authentic. I'm not dealing with a real soul.
I think there's another side effect too.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something which, again, we kind of observed with this current generation. They've been driven inward, and they found that the truth is within, and that's an actually very interesting thing, because when you have what you say is a trustworthy society, an external trustworthy society with pinnings, it's still form, it's still the world, it's still not a relationship with being, it's a relationship with form. And yes, it does work. But if you're presented with chaos is like adversity. Chaos in some ways is like the suffering which can also drive you inward. And it's like the lack of authenticity, the chaos says, well, there's nothing out there for me, but I want the relationship of truth. It drives you into introspection. It drives you into seeing that this chaotic presentation of all this different form it doesn't have the truth. It doesn't have the heart in it. Maybe you can find certainly relationships within that to one to another, but you're also driven inward. So the introspection starts earlier. A lot of, in let's say our generation or many prior ones, the introspection would start much later. You say, well, what is the meaning of my life? The whole idea of this, now I've reached my 60s, my 70s. Well, I feel so void. I feel so empty. I have to find some meaning in my life. No, now much, much earlier. Unfortunately early in some regards, but maybe not. Maybe this is just where they have to be. I have to accept this. Is that they're looking for a authentic relationship, and they find it in the being. And then there's this idea that once you've made that relationship, you can use it as a discerning wand, as a discerning laser. Say, all this is phony, but look, this one, this being, there's an authenticity to this being.
Yes.
I see another like unto me, yet very different, of course, and I can open that dialogue, and we both have the ability to screen out all that is chaos. We found it in a different way, in going through all the trials that we went through with Christopher and going through the suffering of that. All the chaos of the world was stripped away. In great suffering, you mentioned earlier, there's great isolation. You have to go within. In great chaos, there's great lack of, there's a total lack of being able to trust. You have to go within. Anything that brings you within, again in our quote, they say the most authentic things about us are creation. We talked about it last week. The creative force is a turning within first. You create it within the void within yourself, and then you bring it out to the world.
Right.
So it's being where you find authenticity isn't out there. Once you find it within, then you can seek for another who has also found it within and create a new authentic type of bond. But if you go immediately outward, you'll get even in the in the societies that you have a lot of quote unquote implicit trust in institutions, it's still not. It's still not. It was just perhaps better curated. But the true the true lens, the true relationship was always going within, and if you kind of stay out there and you don't go within, you get to your 60s and 70s and say, well, all this was great, but what's the meaning of life? I have my existential midlife crisis.
Well, I think that is what we would have termed, this is the cycles that you go through.
Yeah.
Your 20s, you don't care, you're just going to go do, and then suddenly you're not happy. And then you think you follow what society's telling you. You have to go out and you have to get a job and
Make some money.
Right. And then even if you get the money, it's still empty.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the cycle of the earlier generation. This generation, as we said, you are put into this question much earlier because there's so much illusion that is being thrown at you that you must find a reality set. The illusion that's being thrown at you is not cohesive. It's not there to guide you, to help you grow. It's there to get something from you. And when you realize that particular feel, that energy of I want something from you, that's when that screen comes up. And you're like, I don't have to interact with you.
Exactly.
See, and that alone, that realization alone is priceless.
Right, because you claim yourself
Mm-hmm.
right in that point.
You do not have to interact with what's trying to present itself. We call it disengage. You can disengage from the situation and not grasp or take the bait, if you would.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. And not only that, but in earlier societies, in the society that you and I grew up in, you answered the telephone. When somebody knocked on the door, you talked to them.
Right.
When somebody greeted you, you said hello. Why? Those outward institutions were inculcated in us in that you had to, if somebody talked to you, you have to interact with them. You can't just ignore them.
Oh, sure.
Because, and it was a certain respect. Unfortunately, all that got undermined. All that has been destroyed and broken. But now that
it's
mistrust, abuse of all that.
It was an abused thing.
And for a while it worked, and it was worked as propaganda. Now it's not working at all. But this generation has worked out something that our generation didn't work out for a long time. Is you can claim yourself. You can say, I don't have to interact with you. And I don't care if you think I'm impolite. That was the big thing. Oh, you're being impolite. You've got to talk to them. We were
Yes.
raised that way.
Yes.
Now people are impolite, but because you might say, well, geez, why aren't you talking to me? But in fact, this is a form. That's the respect that they have to give it. They have to say to you, you haven't earned the right to interact with me. I'll give you my avatar, maybe, or I'll just ignore you, most likely. And the reason I do that is that, as far as I'm concerned, you're still a chimera. You're not just an unknown. You're a potential threat, a potential parasite.
Right.
And I don't have to interact with you because I know who I am already. That's a great power to claim, to say, I get to choose whether I talk to you or not, whether I let you even through the first gate.
Right.
And then, having claimed that, and then also having then looked inward for truth, they've completed two giant steps: claiming your own space and finding that the inward space needs observation and that the consciousness resides there. And then with those two powers in hand, turning back to the chaos and saying, nothing here is, this one I'll interact with because I can see the truth in it.
Right.
This is something great and powerful. And the interesting thing about when you undermine all society, you think, well, here's the chaos. Now I can take control. Now in this there's opportunity. No. You've educated a whole generation in how to claim themselves first and to go within for power. And that is a very significant development in the human psyche, if you ask me. There's going to be great ramifications from that going forward in the next generations.
Because people are always talking about, oh, we have to raise our consciousness. And
Right.
I'm serious, you see they're always saying, oh, raising the consciousness so we can help the earth. And don't get me wrong, that is true. But when you see and hear the presentation, you know whether or not this person is actually authentic. In other words, they are doing it.
Right.
Because it would be stamped on their being that they have decided that they are going to be authentic. And the ones that basically, you could see when someone has this idea that I'm going to be the guru, the teacher, so I have to talk a certain way. I have to express my hands in a certain manner.
Soft tone.
Yes. And it goes on, and you're like, ego. That's all ego.
It's all ego.
And if you've come to the point where you realize it's inauthentic, you will not interact, no matter how much information that person may have.
Right.
You realize it's coming from a place that isn't true.
Falseness.
Well, living true.
Right.
Because people can come up with these wonderful concepts, and it sounds good. But when you're walking the walk, you realize you are human, and you are walking with all the foibles and weaknesses that a human being has. So you engage. And when you engage, it's with great compassion. Because you understand how weak a human being actually is, or how broken they actually are. And their only way of moving forward is if they touch into their own eternal spirit. And that guides them to who they actually are. It's not self that is the ego, but self that is the consciousness. And that is a great leap.
It really is. And, the path, you can get there lots of different ways. The path through suffering or through great adversity, through trial. And previous generations went through great adversity, depressions and wars and famines and all kinds of things like that. And those types of trials can bring forth greatness and great connection to spirit and great connection to consciousness. And you see it. But now you have a generation that was brought there through this chaotic environment, and they were turned inward in a quiet way, and all at once almost.
It's a more real way. I mean, this is life. And the only way you learn anything is if you're taking steps forward in life.
Yeah.
So it presents itself that way. And one thing I think that needs to be said is the tendency to evaluate your situation, where you are compared to where someone else may be. It's an outward looking of, well, this is where I'm starting, this is how I'm starting. And we have been trained that way. You're supposed to take stock of what's going on and what you have and what you don't have. You've got a project, you got to figure out what you got to do in order to get from here to there. What I'm seeing is that they understand they have to start where they are, which is also another big step forward. You must start somewhere. So you start where you are, and then you begin to take steps forward. And this is where the temptation comes in to judge where you're starting, like, oh, well, I'm just a, driver for Amazon or something, But that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because that connection to the spirit, the eternal spirit within, understands that that is a moment where potential is planted. Something else is going to be coming. And that's what I like about that realization, that generation.
Yeah.
They understand that because that connection with the eternal spirit, the rest is illusion.
Yes.
But there is reality out there. And it's got to be guided by what my heart is telling me. What I found is the love that they feel is authentic.
Yes.
It's not conditional. They will love you no matter what your foibles are.
Well, and they think they love themselves, and they're not looking for external reference to know whether or not they should be good or not. You know, that was the whole idea. Well, I'm only an Amazon driver, so that means that I'm less than.
Right.
No.
That has nothing to do with it.
But that was the prior feeling, is if you were this, or you're less than. You know, and you have to be that, and you have to be this, and you have to be the other thing before you get to be great, and then you can tell people what to do. No, none of that. The wisdom of looking within says, I am, and all others are just exactly like me, no less, no greater.
Right.
And that's a great realization.
Yes, that life has something amazing for you.
And here we go.
And we have reached the end of our hour.
That's authentic.
Mm-hmm. So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.